All right, up next is Evan. Evan wrote in and said, I'm a woman, an anti feminist, a bit of a traditionalist, and I hate seeing all of this disgusting feminist rhetoric tearing our country apart. One of the major problems is how they scream about everything being misogyny and sexist. However, recently I've been noticing an unsettling new movement that concerns me, and that's the MGTOW movement, men going their own way. I understand that a lot of frustration men have with how things are going, but I've been hearing a lot of actual misogyny coming out of this movement. Many of these men hate all women, refusing to believe there is a single good woman out there, and they seem to encourage this hatred from other men. I want the sexes to come together again. We benefit each other and need each other for a harmonious society. What are your thoughts on this? That's from Evan.
Well, hello, Evan. How are you doing?
Hi, Stefan. I'm really good. How are you?
Very well. I'm very well. Thank you. So, MGTOW. So, for those who don't know, this is sort of men going their own way, and I would not call myself a fantastic expert on it, but my understanding is that they view women as fine as a whole, but women plus the state are a very dangerous combination. And they generally come out, I think, of, I don't want to characterize their backstory too much, but I would imagine that a lot of them come out of situations where they have seen a man or more than one man taken through the living hell of the family court system and spat out a stinky old piece of orange rind on the far side and just find that particularly horrifying.
Sure.
And find that dangerous, right? I mean, and so there are different levels of MGTOW, right? There are guys who don't have anything to do with women. There are guys who, will date occasionally. There are guys who will date more, and then that kind of stuff, right? But their goal is to say, look, I mean, because women vote more and because there's generally a deference in Western culture to the needs and preferences of women, society, politicians, and so on have created a countries or legal system that absurdly favor women at the expense of men. And a woman can get married to you. She can wake up one day and decide she doesn't like you and just leave and take half your stuff, and then you're obligated to pay her. Like in California, I think after 10 years of marriage, you have to pay alimony for the rest of your life to the woman, right? And so they're looking and saying, well, okay, so the benefits are, there, of course, right? But the dangers are enormous and need to be kept an eye on. I don't think they say, women are just bad or anything like. I mean, of course there are some, right? I mean, there are some feminists who say, right, there's the scum, the Society for Cutting Up Men, which is, pretty
Right.
radical and extreme areas of feminism, and I'm sure that there are similar reflections in the manosphere. But I think they say, look, women will seek their advantage just as everyone does, but women have a special kind of advantage because of the white knighting and deference shown to women in Western cultures, and indeed in all cultures where marriage and childbirth are the voluntary choice of the women. Then the women will have an enormous amount of power. And you combine women's power in the sexual market, especially when they're young, with the state and its deference towards the preferences and needs of women, and you end up with a system where femininity combined with the state creates a trap which destroys countless men. And you can watch the movie Divorce Corps or Divorce Corp
Yeah,
for
it's a
more
great
on this.
movie.
I have had the filmmaker on twice on this show talking about these kinds of things. And so it really, I think, is more of a criticism of statism than it is a criticism of femininity as a whole. And because their argument is that biologically, women view men as resource providers, right? That is the way that it works biologically. And there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, the reason there are men and women is because we need to reproduce. And for most of human evolution, women were disabled by being pregnant, by giving birth to children, by breastfeeding, by then being pregnant, giving birth to more. So they needed stable providers. And so they viewed men largely as a utility for the provision of resources for their babies. Again, I'm not criticizing. There's nothing wrong with it. In the same way that men view women as fertility objects for bringing their own sperm to fruition in the form of a child. And this is just how evolution works. And so the funny thing is, of course, like men will say, well, so women complain about being objectified for their looks, while men have a reason to complain about being objectified for our resource provision. And whether that resource provision occurs in the in the realm of a family, where a man may be stuck in a job he doesn't like, but he's got to provide for his wife and kids, and somehow this is patriarchal massive freedom. Or it may occur in the form of the state, where men pay the vast majority of taxes, women take an enormous amount more out of the tax system than they pay in, and so you have the state facilitating the resource transfer, coercive resource transfer in this case.
Right, of course.
From men to women. So I don't know that it's female... no individual woman has the power to throw a man in jail for failure to pay alimony or child support. And they say, look, this is the only place where you get thrown in jail. Debtor's prison is gone completely from the West, except for men who owe money to women, in which case, yes, you can get thrown in jail and your life can be destroyed, right? I mean, you
Absolutely. Well, and I understand all of that.
Let me just finish, and then I'll give it to you. So, you can get married, a woman can divorce you, maybe you lose your job, or somebody outsources you, or you get H-1B visa and have to train your own placement, can't find a new job. Well, I guess you can try to get your alimony or child support payments adjusted, but that's expensive. And if you don't have the money to do that, and it doesn't always work because it's a pretty gynocentric court system in the family courts in particular, and then what happens is you can't pay your alimony or child support to the degree that you're supposed to, and next thing you know, you get arrested and thrown in jail. And then but while you're in jail, your alimony and child support payments continue to accumulate, and then you come out and you're supposed to pay these things, but you now have a record because you were in jail, and so it's even tougher for you to find work, and maybe you then go back to jail. That is a terrifying scenario, and it's not as rare as people think. And you can look at Dave Foley. I think he was on Joe Rogan's show talking about this Canadian comedian who's had a pretty terrifying experience. Alec Baldwin wrote a whole book about his divorce from Kim Basinger, and he said basically it's like, if they tie you by a rope to the back of a pickup truck and drag you along a gravel road, it ends when they say it ends. There's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to try and survive, and that's basically what happens in the court system. So it's a terrifying situation. And now that we've had one generation of men that this has already happened to, then their children, much like the children of the Japanese men who worked themselves to death or who worked themselves into ill health in Japan, they don't want to get married and have kids. It's just tilted too far to be pro-female, which means that it's become very dangerous for men to get involved and get married to women. So that's I'm sorry you know this stuff, but I'm not going to assume that the audience,
Sure.
We got new audiences all the time. I don't know if that sort of fits with the way that you would view it, but men say, listen, we're checking out of being resources and utilities for women and for society because society treats us like garbage and throws us in jail and does all of these terrible things, and we don't want to have anything to do with it. Why would we?
Right, absolutely. And I think that I kind of perceive that as being more of the MRAs, the men's rights activists, who I'm very supportive of. Because I think they have so many good points of how, the pendulum has swung the other way so far, as they say. And I agree with all of that. And I've watched Divorce Court, and it's horrifying and it's disgusting. And I can't imagine the fear that men have. I'm just afraid because I sort of stumbled into a MGTOW video a couple weeks ago, and the discourse was really sort of it was this whole tone of this woman, she always wanted kids and her husband wouldn't give her kids, and well, I don't know why she didn't sperm jack him. There must have been a prenup or something. And I started kind of watching these MGTOW videos and going to the Reddit threads and all of that, and it's
Wait, I'm sorry. I lost the thread of that story.
Oh, sure.
So was this a man talking about a woman talking to another one?
I'm sorry. It was a sort of MGTOW supporter reading an article about a woman who had decided to have an open marriage with her husband because after 18 years, he never gave her kids. And so when he was discussing this, he was just sort of speculating about her, and there was no information about anything, but he said, well, I don't know why she didn't just sperm jack him like all women would or all women do. And so there was just kind of this assumption of, well, if a woman wanted kids, she'd just, screw over her husband and take his sperm and freeze it and inject herself or whatever. And I just thought it was very strange that he didn't give her any, sort of moral autonomy of maybe she's just a moral human being who loves and respects her husband, but always wanted kids. And so that just kind of was the catalyst for me to start looking into things. And on the MGTOW side, I've seen so much thing about, women are all cunts and whores and stupid bitches who will cheat on you and all this. And it's very similar to the rhetoric that I've been hearing from the feminist movement about men. And I see it more as two sides of kind of the same coin. And it just concerns me for the future of our society, because I just think that we need each other so much. Both men and women need each other so much for a stable and flourishing society. The nuclear family is the best way to raise kids and the most successful way for us to be able to be a free society. And I just see all of these movements as kind of tearing us all apart.
Well, okay, I mean, you've said a lot. Now,
Yeah,
obviously,
sorry.
there are people full of incoherent rage at every movement.
Sure.
I'm sure there are asshole Buddhists at the fringe of the Buddhist movements or whatever. I mean, so you know that you can't take, that there's no MGTOW stamp of approval, right? There's
Right.
you're genuine. Anyone can say that they're MGTOW. Anyone can put out a MGTOW video. I mean, I've listened to a bunch of different MGTOW people over the years, and I've never heard anything like that. I've heard, female nature and so on, and criticisms of female nature, which is fair.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, because you understand that they're trying to balance things, because we're, girls are sugar and spice and all things nice. This is how we're raised, that women are perfect and boys are smelly and broken and mean and loud and rough and all that. Right. I mean, they're just dirty. Mm-hmm. So we're raised with this halo around femininity and this, curse, this voodoo curse of negativity around boys. So, they're trying to sort of balance things out. And if you see those guys sailing, right, their ship is half blown over and they're all leaning the other way because they don't want the damn thing to tip over.
Yeah.
Now, that's a pretty extreme thing to do when the boat is flat. Your head would... Somebody who's full of hate, who says, I'm MGTOW, and women are these terrible, terrible people, right? Mm-hmm. That's not... I don't think that's fair. I mean, that's a confession of that person's instability and hostility than it is a sort of movement that is fairly thoughtful as a whole. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, I don't think that you can reasonably compare MGTOW to feminism.
Okay.
And I'll just give you a couple of reasons why. Mm-hmm. The first of all, feminism is much older. I mean, you could say feminism, like 150 years old, right? And so MGTOW is a couple of years old. That's sort of number one. And number two is that MGTOW is not centrally organized, and feminism has been centrally organized throughout much of its history. There are feminist groups, feminist meetups, feminist leaders, and so on, and there's not that really... It's a very, very loose affiliation of people who have lots of crossovers and so on. Yeah. So, but the most important thing is that MGTOW is scorned and attacked by the media, whereas feminism is praised by the media, even when it clearly doesn't deserve it. In fact, deserves criticism, if not downright condemnation. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is that feminism gets billions and billions of dollars of government money throughout the world, and MGTOW people have webcams, and YouTube channels, right?
Yeah.
And this, of course, is exactly their point, which is to say, when women want something, society bends over backwards to provide it. Mm-hmm. But when men want something, they're attacked as misogynists.
Right, and I totally agree.
So feminism is a whole hyper-industrial, quasi-statist structure. I mean, feminists are all over the place. Yeah. In universities, mm-hmm. Everywhere you look, in the arts in particular, there are feminists, and pretty radical feminists too. Now, you try and get one men's group meeting on a university, what happens?
Yeah, that's not allowed to happen.
It's not allowed. No. A couple of years ago, I was invited to give, by Paul Elam, I think it was, I was invited to give a speech at a men's conference in Detroit. It was a great speech, by the way. People should go and watch it. But and beforehand, though, I was informed that I could go and speak I was certainly welcome to come, but I was also I'd be understood if I didn't come, because there had been a series of bomb threats towards the speakers and the speaking engagement. Now, I don't mind thunderous sounds when I'm giving a speech. I just don't like it accompanied with shrapnel.
Yeah.
So
I don't blame you.
now, this was not reported on at all. And there were reporters there openly hostile to the men's rights movement who were writing to put it down as much as possible. And if you can imagine, if men's rights groups had phoned in a bomb threat to a feminist conference, I mean, you understand the difference in sort of media reaction. It would be insane, hysterical. There'd be houses of parliament would convene to, it'd be like, it would be investigations, RCMP, right? And this is, so it is not, I think, to equate these two, one giant government subsidized, infests academia, dominates the arts, dominates media, dominates newspapers, magazines, television shows, gets billions of dollars in funding, versus, 1 in 10,000 guys with a webcam. I don't think you want to put those two things in the same scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I was maybe just kind of seeing some worrying. I'm worried that they might go. And that certainly includes feminists. I mean, I really wish that feminism would just disappear altogether, and that we wouldn't need to have these movements.
Well, it will. I mean, it will. It will, because when the government runs out of money and feminism faces the market test of female happiness, right now, feminism is funded and it makes women unhappy.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes women so unhappy.
It says, don't worry about getting married, have a career, don't worry about having children. Oh, dear, you missed your fertility window. I guess it's cats for you.
Yeah.
And don't worry about being overweight. You're beautiful if you're 300 pounds. It's like, nope, I'm sorry. Men, and Milo points this out. I'm obviously borrowing from the great golden-haired god of the right, but the reality is not just, men are visual creatures, like it's somehow shallow. It's like, no, being obese is bad for fertility. It's bad for childbearing. It's bad for child raising. Nobody wants to have kids with a woman who's going to die at 35, because that's quite a liability. They're usually not done growing, the kids, by that point. And nobody wants to spend a year trying to get an obese woman pregnant because her hormones are all out of whack because of obesity. It's not just men like them slender because we're shallow creatures. Right. It's like, nope. It's basic biology as to what men find attractive, and what they find attractive is significant fertility markers, which is the whole point of why men are attracted to particular body types, and youth, and clear skin, and clear eyes, and lustrous hair, and a hip-to-waist ratio that denotes fertility, and even features, and signs of good genetics, and no pockmarked skin, and all of this kind of stuff. It's all just it's the good gene scanning that is, you'll be being objectified. It's like, well, yeah, but you have the eggs. So that's how it's going to. Men are objectified too.
Right.
I mean, I don't think men feel like society is giving them a massive amount of deep respect for their individuation when it drafts them to go and fight in a war. Would you rather be objectified by a catcall or get a draft card? Right. Anyway, that's a topic for another time. But
yeah, well,
I agree with you. Healing would be great. But here's the thing I'm concerned about. And I'm sorry if this sounds harsh, but you're taking the usual route here, which is to shame men.
Oh, I don't mean
right.
to.
Because you found the most extreme manifestations of male anger, and you're bringing that up. The men said women are whores and other things and so on, right? But that's a shaming of male tactic. In other words, your approach is, and I'm not criticizing, I'm pointing it out because it's hard to see when you do it yourself.
Right.
But your approach is, you have found men doing something wrong, and you're shaming a movement by finding men who are doing something wrong. And I'm going to tell you, MGTOWs see that coming a mile away. Oh, so you found some crazy MGTOW guy who went on some misogynistic rant, and now you're saying, well, this is MGTOW and it needs to be fixed, and there is this shaming of men that is involved. And my question is, why are you taking this approach where you feel free to criticize and shame men, why not criticize and shame women?
Well, I don't. I mean, I give feminism so much shit. I mean, just every day. I think they're a bunch of miserable, horrible witches that treat men absolutely horribly. And I've said, and maybe I haven't said it very well here, that I absolutely understand the grievances that men have. And I'm very, very much in support of, the MRA movement. And I mean, I'm not an activist either way, but if I was, it would certainly be for the MRAs rather than feminism. I guess that I just feel like feminism has a lot of critical eyes on it. And I haven't seen that much criticism of MGTOW, just kind of my personal experience, probably because they're much smaller. But it's
You haven't seen criticism of MGTOW?
no, not that much. At least not as much as anti-feminist kind of stuff. And that's probably just due to what I watch and kind of what I
Oh, well, I mean, anytime the mainstream media writes about men's movements at all.
I don't watch mainstream media.
Unutterably. No, but I understand. But I mean, then don't say, I don't think there's much. If you've not researched it, then don't say there's not much criticism. I mean, the idea that men are not criticized in society, but women are more criticized in society, you understand that for a man, it's really hard to see that.
Sure. No, absolutely. I understand that. And I mean, I would love to make an anti-feminism channel and speak out about it, because I'm not afraid of, the herd of angry, blue-haired, nose-pierced, demon 300-pound feminists coming at me. I mean, they just don't scare me. I think that they're all insignificant children.
Climb a flight of stairs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're okay.
Yeah,
you're above their predictable range of attacks.
Right. And I guess it was coming more from a place of caring rather than trying to criticize. Is that I love men. I adore men. I think that they're amazing, and I think that they tend to have a much higher tolerance for really anything than women do. They take so much shit that women couldn't begin to take, and they take it in stride. They take it very well, and it's just
not anymore.
Yeah, I know, not anymore. It's more out of a place of caring, that I don't want to see both sides turn into this kind of war. And I totally understand if it does. I mean, it makes sense, like you said, that, the other side of the weight that feminism has.
No, but come on, I appreciate all of this. But when you understand that the approach you took in this conversation, and I'm not offended, right? I mean, I'm not upset. I'm just pointing it out. But once you understand that the approach you took was to take the worst possible manifestation of men and say, I'm worried all men are becoming that way, that's a male-shaming tactic.
Oh, no. I'm not saying all men. I'm saying specifically the MGTOW movement. I mean, they can't be.
Okay, let's just say specifically the MGTOW movement. Mm-hmm. So you took the worst possible element of somebody who calls himself a MGTOW and say, I'm afraid that all the MGTOW men are going that way.
I'm afraid that's
based on what evidence?
I mean, a lot of things I've gone through Reddit threads and kind of read, and I've read some respectful things too, for sure. I've just read a lot of, as much research as I can do. And I don't think that they should be immune from criticism. I mean, should they?
No, but you're taking somebody. I mean, I have to keep repeating the same point, right? Is that the mainstream MGTOWs that I've read or heard about are not saying the kind of things that you found, right?
Sure.
Okay. But the fact that you would take that and extrapolate it to the movement as a whole is a male-shaming tactic.
Well, I mean, maybe I've experienced something different than you then, potentially. I mean, if that's not the mainstream of what you've seen, but if it's the mainstream of what I've seen, I mean, my sample size, I'm sure, is not big enough.
Well, if you're talking about message boards, that's one thing, right? If you would have to, I think, go to the most popular MGTOW channels on YouTube or other places, and you'd have to listen to a whole bunch of shows. And, if they were regularly referring to women using the most derogatory and horrifying language, and maybe that had been escalating or increasing, then I think you would have the beginnings of a case, right? But if you're just going and finding stuff that's shocking and then saying, well, this is, somehow representative of the direction of the movement as a whole, well, I'm just telling you that's not going to work.
Sure.
If you want to help the movement, then shaming them for saying, well, there's this crazy MGTOW guy who said all these horrible things, and I'm concerned that's where the movement is going as a whole, and so we need healing. I mean, that's not how you reach out to people who are used to that tactic. And I'm not saying you're deploying it as a tactic sort of consciously, but that's not any way to reach out to people
Right. Well, no, and I mean, I saw some of this from, MGTOW 101 and Turd Flinging Monkey and kind of these big guys in the movement on their YouTube channels. And that's why, I mean, if it had been one or two things, it's, whatever, but it's sort of one of these things that just I noticed as being a little bit of a norm in the big YouTube channels and on the message boards and kind of anywhere that I could find it.
Right.
And so that's just what made me concerned. And I'm not trying to say that MGTOW is this big woman hating movement who, hates all women in general, because they don't have a leader. They don't have a, sort of a core central kind of thing like feminism, which does, and which absolutely does hate men and wants to shame men and destroy men. And I guess just out of my own fear, I don't want to see MGTOW go that way, because they do have such good points. They do have such great points with the horrible divorce, the entire divorce court and families and all of these things. And I agree with them so much on all of that. So it was just kind of a concern that I had, because I really do want to help, and I want to try to make things better in some way. And I'm not really sure how to do that. And I know certainly, I mean, priority number one is abolish feminism, because it's horrible.
What do you mean by abolish feminism?
Well, the movement as a whole, I wish that feminism would just go away.
But abolish how?
I don't know.
Okay, that's sort of important, right?
Yeah, I don't know how.
Sort of
That's the problem. I wish that women could kind of wake up and see all the wonderful things that men do for them, and that, they...
Oh, they will. They will. I mean, and then, this is where I think that you and I can reach, I think, some significant agreement.
Mm-hmm.
That women will see all the wonderful things men do for them once the state stops forcing men to do them for them.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when the state runs out of money and women can't get what they want by calling people misogynists, right? Because this is kind of the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's that women, or their representatives, the more extreme, there's not all women, of course, but the more extreme representatives of feminism will just, scream rape culture, will scream misogyny, will scream woman hater, will whatever it is, right? And then they get what they want.
Yeah.
Because when there's a huge amount of resources in society, and the welfare state and borrowing and the tax revenues and debt and deficits and bonds and all of that creates this illusion of infinite resources. Now, when you have infinite resources, think of it like your kids love carrots. You're sitting on a mountain of carrots and one kid is screaming for carrots. What do? You give them a carrot.
Yeah.
Right? Because why not?
Yeah.
It's not bad for them, and you have more than enough carrots, and you don't like it when they scream at you. So when there's a situation or a system where the appearance is of infinite resources,
mm-hmm.
then appeasement is the rational course of action.
Right.
Now, when you're running low on food and one of your kids complains that he's hungry, and you've got a long way, let's say you're evolving, right? You've got a long way to go. It's winter. You've got a long way to go till spring. Well, now just giving the whiniest kid food doesn't make any sense, because your resources are limited. So as long as there is infinite resources, or the appearance thereof, then you'll have all of this appeasement. And what it does is it breeds the worst behavior among the worst people, right? The most tantrums, the most abuse, the most, the old squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Mm-hmm. So if you create the most trouble for people, because there's infinite resources, they'll just peel off one of these infinite dollar bills and shove them your way to shut you up, right?
Right.
But when resources run out, well, then feminism won't have anything to say.
Do you think it'll
because
take
the actual
that point?
need for men to provide resources to women directly and voluntarily will reassert itself? So, I mean, don't worry about feminism or banning feminism. I mean, that's all going to fall apart. I mean, that's inevitable. I mean, this can't possibly be sustained. So, I wouldn't worry about feminism as a whole. The question is, I guess, I mean, if you want healing, because this is the interesting thing, right? Like, if you want healing between the genders, I guess my concern, which I'm sort of feel like I'm circling back to remind you of, if you want healing between the genders, then saying that men who are very concerned with gender relations are somehow all equivalent to men who call women "see you next Tuesday" words and whores and things like that, I don't know that that's promoting a huge amount of healing, if that makes any sense. Well, here's some crazy, evil, misogynist guy, and I'm concerned that all of MGTOW is going that way, but I want healing between the genders. It's like, well, then why are you picking some crazy, evil guy and saying he's representative of a whole movement if you want healing between the genders?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't just one guy, but I definitely see your point in how that's not productive. So I guess I'm trying to figure out what is productive. Do you think it will take until the state runs out of money? Or, I mean, can society not figure out that all of this is negative and discourage it, before the state runs out of money, for example?
I mean, the relationships between the genders, or gender relations, are at I think, a historic low for all of Western civilization. I actually think that relationships were better between the genders during the Salem witch trials than they are right now.
I agree.
I think that, and the reason is that this one of the main reasons is that these endless disproven allegations of rape or sexual misconduct or whatever it is, right? Sexually predatory behavior and so on. I mean, these allegations, they're coming fast and furious, and so many of them are being discredited. Right. That basically, I think a lot of men are saying, well, okay, so the end result of all of this talking about rape culture and patriarchy and male privilege, the result has been to weaponize Western women against Western men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that is terrifying for men, right? I mean, a false allegation is life destroying. Can be life destroying.
Yeah, there's the guy who killed himself over that false accusation at I can't remember the university, but yeah, I mean, he committed suicide over something that she admitted was false, and nothing happened to her, and that blows my mind too. I mean,
yeah, of course, rationally, if you falsely accuse someone of something, you should get the punishment they would have gotten otherwise. That would be a rational and just solution, but of course, that can't happen. I mean, what happened to the women who withheld significant information from the police in the John Ghomeshi trial up here in Canada? Nothing.
Right.
No perjury, no obstruction of justice, no lying to the cops, nothing.
Yeah.
And every single one of these things that happens, and we see, of course, what is it now, 12 women who says Trump has grabbed them or groped them or whatever.
I don't believe a single one
in the last few weeks before, and I held my silence for 34 years, and then right before the election, I thought it was a fantastic idea to speak out. And, the porn star who said he grabbed her inappropriately, it's like,
yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
No, I don't give those any credence at all.
I'm a dancer. He looked at me. Anyway, so all of this stuff is being very well noted by men.
Yeah.
And what they're noting is that female instability, which is not to say all women are unstable, but those women who are unstable exist as a weapon against a successful man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're doing something, if you become very prominent and you're doing something the left doesn't like, then they have the capacity to find women to accuse you of terrible things that, at least according to Trump, never ever happened. And I think there's significant indications that these women, not all these women, are fully on the up and up.
Right. For sure.
And so women now have been weaponized against successful men. And not even successful men, just any man. Mm-hmm. That if the powers that be don't like you, then they can weaponize women against you. And maybe you'll clear your name eventually, or maybe not, or whatever, right?
Right.
But, the internet is forever.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the accusation alone is enough.
And so, I mean, you can get you can be accused of sexual misconduct for women, like you may never even have met them.
Right. Right.
15 years ago, you have no memory of this person, and she says you did this. It might have been you or a camera bag that bumped me in the lower back at a Ray Charles concert so many years ago, right? That Ray Charles concert never happened, on that date, and so on, right? So this is a witch hunt, and the only way I think that this thing can be solved before the state runs out of money is for women to work to destroy the social status of women who falsely accuse. Because men are looking at it and saying, okay, well, we can't solve this problem because if we attack these women, we're afraid that all the women will attack us back for being misogynist because we're treating women like equals. In other words, we're treating them the way we treat men.
Right.
But if women got together and said, okay, sister, you falsely accused a man, that could have been my husband, that could have been my son, that could have been my brother. Oh, and by the way, if you continue to falsely accuse men, if I or my daughter or my sister or my mother is ever sexually assaulted and we try and tell people, they won't believe us because of what you people are doing. And so we are now going to work to take you down.
Right, absolutely. And
I mean, that's what the left does, right? And
Yeah.
this is what the alt-right is doing now, is they finally understand that there's no point fighting clean with people who are fighting dirty.
Right, exactly. And I totally agree with that. And
So if there's a movement among women to say, no. The sexual assault against women is not to be used as a political tool. It's not to be used as a tool of social control or political advantage. It is absolutely heinous to use men's sympathy for women in order to destroy men. Right, because men are very attached to Donald Trump, white men in particular, very attached to Donald Trump. And they see women trying to take him down, weaponized women trying to take him down. And do they see other women going out there and digging up all the dirt and the facts? No. Mm-mm. It's other men in general who are doing that. The feminists aren't sitting there saying, whoa, sister, don't you start swinging around that club of sexual impropriety without facts, without proof. We're going to check you out. Mm-hmm. And if we find out that your story doesn't hold together, if we find out that facts aren't the way that you present them, you are in big trouble. Now, I don't mean that they're going to sue them or anything. I just mean that, they attack. Mm-hmm. The first caller was talking about, well, we're going to contact your employer. We're going to boycott your company. Like, if women are going to do that, well, then men might look and say, wow, some women get it. Some women really understand it. And some women care enough about men that they're going to work to shield us from unstable, weaponized women aimed at us by the left.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. And I think that women who go against feminism get attacked really hard also. And I think that's why a lot of women are kind of afraid to do that. But they need to not be, and to speak out against it. And, I wanted to call into you and speak out against feminism and this kind of stuff as well. And I guess I've been trying to figure out how the best way to go about bringing the sexes together, because gender relations are just so bad. And it is going to take a lot of women coming together against this movement in particular, and, feminism. And it's just kind of so overwhelming. I just don't know how to fix it. And I know it's not all up to me to fix it.
Well, I just gave you a solution.
Right, for sure.
You don't have to take it, but when I say, if you want to get to town ABC, head north, and then you say, well, I have no idea how to get to town ABC, I'm like, well, I did just say something. You may not want to do it. You may have another approach, but there's one solution, which is to get a whole bunch of women together. Like, I remember listening to the Honey Badgers once, Karen Strawn and others whose names escape me, and they were talking about a man whose ex-wife had accused him of rape. And it was only fortunately that he ended up with an alibi, and then I think she accused him again, and she got the date wrong, and he was out of town, and then she accused him again, and basically he could not be alone. He could go to the bathroom alone if someone's standing outside the door. Right. He could never be alone because he always needed an alibi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love them, and I listen to them all the time as well. I think they're fantastic. So maybe just pushing that a little further and trying to get as many women as possible to nut up, so to speak, and speak out against all of this.
Then people either stop because things become impossible, or if you want to do it more proactively, people stop when there are negative consequences for what they're doing.
Sure. And the last...
And right now, what are the negative consequences? Like this mattress girl just got an award, still celebrated.
Blows my mind.
Still celebrated. Astonishing.
Yeah. No, it boggles my mind.
And so, they get lots of rewards for it, right? Now, Donald Trump is going to hide. Donald Trump is talking about suing these women after he becomes president. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's consequences, right? Maybe that will make women think twice about next time. Of course, the police should be in pursuit of women who falsely accuse a man of rape.
Absolutely.
And they should be charged.
Yeah. Maybe he should start carrying a mattress around with him, too.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it would help. I don't know.
But yeah, so those would be my suggestions.
Okay.
Women, men need, in my opinion, I obviously can't speak for all men, but what I'm going to sort of imagine is that men would like to see women organize themselves to bring negative social consequences, all legal, all peaceful and so on, but bring negative social consequences to destructive women.
Okay, absolutely. Well,
and because right now, the people who are investigating these allegations of sexual misconduct from women, they're all men. And the women, people are broadcasting it in general are all men. Mm-hmm. And it would be fantastic, I think, for men to see a whole bunch of women get together and say, no, 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 this has got to stop now because this is discrediting women. This is discrediting genuine allegations of sexual impropriety. And this is alienating men. And men can't fight this battle because if men try and fight this battle, all these people will scream that they're misogynists, which is going to be tougher to pin on women.
Right. Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. And I'd like to start kind of getting more involved and being more proactive than I have been.
And you can contact, right? You can, I'm sure, Girl Rights What, Karen Strawn, or some of the fine women at the Canadian outlets, the Rebel Media, Lauren Southern and others would be happy to give you tips. And you can get started. You can just start the process yourself. And now is the time. I mean, I'm not just waiting for the state to readjust itself when it runs out of money. I'm trying to get as soft a landing as possible so that people understand what happened and can do something better.
Right. And I appreciate everything you do, and I watch your show all the time, and I, appreciate you giving me the advice that you did.
And thank you for the call. I really, really appreciated it. It was really delightful for me, and I hope that you'll call back in once you discover and can help proselytize.
Oh, I'd love to. I'll probably end up staying anonymous and be terrified of being, fired and all of that. But I will definitely call back in once I've made some progress, and hopefully we can have another conversation and talk about all this.
I'd love that. Thanks so much for your call.
Great. Thanks, Stefan.
All right, take care.
You too.